Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 1233B, and today's date is March 20th, 2017, and the title of the episode is Comey was pushed into admitting something. It shows the deep state is in control. Let's get into the economic collapse, political and geopolitical news. Now, today we had the hearings with James Comey, Mike Rogers, and they discussed many different topics. They discussed the wiretapping. They discussed the Russian collusion with Russia and Trump. They discussed the hacking of the election, the hacking of the DNC, and individuals that leaked information out of the government. Now, Comey, he confirmed that the FBI is investigating possible links between Trump and Russia. Now, he didn't comment any further on this, but hold that in the back of your mind as we move forward and we talk about what has been happening during the hearing. Now, FBI Director Comey, he chose his words very, very carefully when he was asked about the wiretaps. Now, people have a lot of questions about the wiretaps. This has nothing to do with clips being put on wires. Maybe Trump should have said, I was under surveillance, but wiretap, that has the definition of somebody came in and actually tapped my wires. But Comey, he said there is no information to support Trump and his tweets where he claims that Obama wiretapped his office. Now, he used the word information, not evidence. Information, the definition of information is the communication or reception of knowledge or intelligence, compared to evidence, something that furnishes proof. So he's saying he didn't receive anything. So let's move on here. He also said, I have no information that supports those tweets, and we've looked carefully, and this is very important, inside the FBI. Well, did he look outside the FBI? Because within his organization, he's found nothing, he's saying. Well, what about outside of the organization? Maybe he didn't go through the FBI. Maybe it was done in another way. And we know from Vault 7 that every single device can be turned into a surveillance piece of equipment. So when we look at this, we see that this is very interesting right off the bat. Now, the National Security Agency has seen no information that alleged Russian interference had affected the vote tally in U.S. states during the 2016 presidential election. This came from Michael Rogers. FBI Director Comey also said that his agency had no such evidence. However, the FBI is currently conducting this probe into Russia's alleged meddling in the 2016 presidential election. Now, doesn't mean they have proof, doesn't mean they have anything there. They're just probing right now because this is what the deep state wants him to do. But let's keep this in the back of our mind as we move forward. The FBI also said that Russia did not deal directly with WikiLeaks and Julian Assange. There is no WikiLeaks link. So that's very interesting right off the bat. So evidence does show that there was no physical wiretapping of Trump Tower during the 2016 presidential campaign, but other means of surveillance have not been ruled out. And this is coming from U.S. Intelligence Chairman Devin Nunes. During the hearing, he's saying that, well, there's no evidence of wiretap, but there's other methods of surveillance. And we know that they use many different types of surveillance. Now, Trump is not letting this go. He was tweeting all day about this, pointing out many different things about what was going on. And a lot of the questions that were being asked and a lot of things that were being said, well, it looks like they were taking it from the corporate media, reading certain articles, taking it as this is the truth, which they should have not have done at all. If they're going to have an investigation, have an investigation. Go past the news articles because we don't know if they're true or not because they're from anonymous sources. And a lot of it is made up. So they need to do a real in-depth investigation, which, as we can see right now, really hasn't been done. But out of all of this, out of all these ridiculous questions they were asking, Trey Gowdy actually had Comey admit something very important. Using the FISA court, using their surveillance apparatus, Comey says, yes, sometimes we intercept U.S. individuals. Now, these individuals, when they're intercepted, when they're talking to foreign individuals, they are masked. And masked means that you don't know who they are. And they're categorized as person 1, person 2, person 3. Trey Gowdy then went on to say, okay, who has the ability to unmask them? Very interesting question. Who has the ability to look at person number 1, person number 2, person number 3, and unmask who they actually are? Reveal their identity. And Comey said, well, it's about, 100 people. And Gowdy said, well, isn't this very important? Because he led off the entire question about, is this a crime, leaking this type of information? Does it hurt national security? And Comey said, yes, it does. This is absolutely awful. We should be going after these people. And it looks like Gowdy was setting him up here because he was leading him into what he was going to ask next, as who are these people? And Comey said, well, about 100 people have the ability to unmask the identities of these people. And then he went even further. He said, well, how about anyone in the Obama administration? Do they have the ability to unmask these individuals? They talked about the Attorney General at the time, Valerie Jarrett. Yes, she would have the ability to do this. Clapper, yes. All these individuals had the ability to unmask. And then he went on to say, well, don't you think that these individuals or these people who have the ability to unmask, shouldn't we investigate these individuals if this is a security threat? Shouldn't everyone be worried about this? And Comey, he really didn't react to this. He really didn't say, yes, we need to start an investigation because it's only about 100 people. And many of the people can be ruled out right away. And a lot of the people around the Obama administration, they had the ability to unmask. So you would think that leaking this information is a national security threat, that it's against the law, they can be imprisoned and fined, that you would start an investigation to find out where these leaks are coming from. Because this is a crime. And as he kept on pushing, Comey really didn't react to this at all. He didn't say, yes, we're going to start this investigation. What that tells you is that he was protecting these individuals. He knows who they are, and he's not going after them, which translates into the following. The deep state controls all of this, all of what he does, all of what he says, all of what he investigates. Gowdy backed him into a corner to see his reaction of what he did, what he said, what he did, and he didn't react. Not in the way you would think. Not in a way where someone says, wow, you know what, you're right. We need to start an investigation with all of these individuals right away because it's a national security threat. He didn't do it at all. This is huge. And you would think all the other senators that were up there would get on this question and say, well, wait a minute. You know there's about 100 people that can leak this information, and you didn't investigate any of them to see if they actually leaked the information? Nothing. Instead, they went and said, well, the Washington Post, they had this in their newspaper. Is this true? And of course they said, we can't comment on that. It looks like they were throwing out the propaganda to convince everyone what was going on here. And they kept on bringing up the FISA Section 702. And they're saying everyone is protected because we keep the people masked. We don't know who they are, except that, the information was unmasked. That's how they found Flynn's information. He was unmasked. Someone had to unmask him. This is how this information got out there. But Section 702, when you look at it, this is the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. Well, we know that it's set to expire come December 31st. And Trey Gowdy made this completely obvious that, listen, if this is going to be a problem and you're not going to investigate the leaks, well, we're going to have a problem approving Section 702 once again. Because it was renewed in 2008, renewed in 2012, and it's coming up for renewal once again. Now, Section 702 of the FISA arguably allows the NSA and other agencies to exploit loopholes to intercept Americans' communication while collecting information on foreign targets. Now, depending on who you speak with, this is an infringement on Americans' privacy under the Fourth Amendment. Now, of course, what they do is they try to get around it by saying that, no, you're masked, you're protected. We're only listening to the foreign individual. Except there are individuals that can unmask you and find out who you are, just like they did which means those people go to jail. And they're fine because Gowdy said it was so important that they included jail time and fines to make sure that people didn't unmask individuals. And Representative Rob Goodlatte, who opened the recent meeting over Section 702 futures, began by outlining it as an important safeguard. He continued, however, saying that we must ensure that our protection doesn't come at the expense of our cherished liberties. Right there, once again, Comey, the FBI, should be mounting an investigation on who leaked this information. And when we look at 702, the warrantless searches, well, they can target anyone and everyone who has contact with a person outside the United States. These people can include journalists, politicians, business executives, human rights activists, attorneys, anyone. And it's most likely that General Flynn's conversation was intercepted because he was speaking with Russia, and it was intercepted under the Section 702. But this information was supposed to be protected. Someone had to unmask it. And there's only about 100 people that have the ability. So you can see Gowdy backed Comey into a corner, showed his true colors, showed that the deep state is still in control, because Gowdy's expression was, "Aren't you going to do anything about it?" And Comey was like, "No, not really." Now, we know that elections are coming up in France very soon. And we know that the people that are in power, well, they're very nervous that Marine Le Pen is going to win. And it looks like they're going to do whatever they possibly can to try to stop this. And we're seeing a lot of chaos out in France at this point. And it's starting to look like a war zone. And we're starting to see protests. Well, they have turned violent. We've seen people throwing things once again. And we can see right now that I'm wondering if they're trying to build up anything that's happening there, anything that's going on. They're trying to start these protests and make them get out of control. So hopefully by the time the election comes along, they can ramp this up so they can say, you know something, we're still in a state of emergency. We're going to have to hold off on these elections. Hollande is going to have to stay in power, and we'll have to revisit this at a later time. Because they know at this point that Marine Le Pen, well, she's in the lead right now, and they're very nervous that she's going to win. We also see the elections are coming up in Germany also, and Merkel, she is very afraid about this. Now, Trump and Merkel, they met together, and of course the corporate media was out there saying this is a very awkward meeting. They didn't want to shake, which is completely fake, phony, and false, because there's plenty of photographs of them shaking at different times. But of course, this is what they're concentrating on, if they shake or don't shake, or if they did shake, which is absolutely ridiculous. But out of the meeting, Trump made a joke about, oh, Merkel was spied on, so was I. Trump also said that Germany owes the United States some money because the United States has been paying a lot out for NATO, and the other countries, well, they need to put in their fair share. And when you look at the different countries and how much they spend, we can see that, well, the United States spends a lot of money on NATO. And if you look at this, you can see for expenditures of NATO countries in 2016, the United States spent about $664 million. That's 3.6% of GDP. When we look at Germany, they spent about $40 million, and that is about 1.2% of GDP. And when you look at the rest of the countries, they're even lower than that. And this is why Trump is out there saying, listen, they need to pick up the tab. They need to, chip in a little bit more because the United States is carrying it all. And we can see at this point that the United States can't afford this anymore. The United States is broke. The United States is continually borrowing currency that can't be paid back. And the economy is deteriorating at the same time. We're heading towards a default situation. And we can see right now, this is why Trump is out there looking at all the different situations saying, we need other countries to really chip in for this if you want NATO to exist. And I agree. The United States shouldn't be the only country. If you're going to be part of NATO, give in your fair share. Now, out in Ukraine, we can see that the IMF, well, they're delaying their new loan to Ukraine. Now, Ukraine, after the coup d'etat, after Victoria Nuland orchestrated the coup d'etat, got the elected leader out, put a puppet government in there, and then we had the IMF come in, put the country into this huge amount of debt. The IMF is looking at the situation saying, we don't know if it's a good idea to give them more debt. Look what happened to Greece. Look what happened to Cyprus. And we can see that Ukraine, well, they're like hours away from completely collapsing. Their country is a complete mess. After the coup d'etat, when Crimea broke off and the southeastern people said we don't want to be part of this puppet government, the IMF, the United States government, central bankers, they just kept on putting them further and further into debt, of course, after they stole their gold. But we can see right now they were expecting to get a disbursement of about $1 billion in loans. And they use this to force the puppet government into doing what they want, and that is to go to war. And right now, they're not receiving the funds until they go to war. This is why Graham was out there. This is why McCain was out there, to push war forward. Now we can see the United States government, central bankers, and all the coalition forces, well, they're panicking right now because what is happening out in Libya. The EU states and the US, they have urged Haftar and Russia to give back the oil ports. The British, French, Italian, U.S. ambassadors to Libya said oil facilities belong to the Libyan people and must remain under the exclusive control of central authorities. Well, Haftar is working for the people, so he's taking back the oil ports. Basically, what they're really saying, what the U.S. and Europe are actually saying, they're panicking right now because the Islamic extremists no longer control the two key oil ports, which they used to control the oil ports, and now Haftar, the people of Libya, actually control it. And they're worried because Russia is now backing Haftar, and they're going to be losing control of Libya. So I wouldn't be surprised if all of a sudden we see a mission to go into Libya. The deep state, the central bankers, are not just going to let this go. No matter what happens here, they're still controlling what is going on. They're behind the scenes, and they're just not going to let the oil ports go. They're just not going to let Libya fall into the hands of the people. They can't let this happen because this will spread throughout the Middle East, and their whole system will implode, which means the economy will implode here, which means the dollar will implode. Now, Lavrov is out there, and he's saying that South Korea's decision to deploy the THAAD anti-missile system from the U.S. is disproportionate to the threat posed by North Korea, which absolutely, because North Korea is just testing missile systems. They haven't mounted a nuclear weapon. There's actually no proof that they actually have a nuclear weapon that could be mounted to a missile at all. And again, North Korea wants to talk to the United States. They want peace. But we can see that whoever's feeding information into Trump, they have him convinced that North Korea is bad. And he keeps saying it's a bad country. And it looks like the deep state, well, they're trying to maneuver the U.S. into war. And like I said, they're going to keep going until they reach the goal. They never give up. Yes, they change their tactics. Yes, they change plans. But they have the end goal, and they always try to meet it. We see right now the Pentagon, well, they have increased deployments of special forces around the Middle East and Africa. And we see there are more and more troops going out throughout this entire area. We see there is about 200,000 troops deployed to 177 nations right now. Now, we need to think about this for a second. Trump wants to increase the Department of Defense budget by an extra $54 billion in federal funding. Can the United States afford this? No, they cannot. But when we look at this and we put this into context, the United States already spends more on defense than the next 7 countries combined. And those countries, as we know, are the following: the UK, Germany, Spain, Italy, and the rest. The United States spends more money. Actually, the additional $54 billion is about the size of the United Kingdom's entire defense budget. We can see right now that we do not need this at this point. Actually, Russia has cut their defense budget, which shows right now if they were pushing for a war, they'd be increasing it. What country is increasing their budget? The United States. And right now, in 2015, Politico estimated that there are about 800 U.S. bases abroad that cost up to $100 billion annually to maintain. And it looks like the number of paces, they haven't really decreased since that period of time. So what we're seeing right here is the deep state, well, they're pushing their control. They're pushing for a war, and they're not going to stop. We see there's another Russian official that has been killed. This is number 8, Vladimir Advokamov. I don't know if I pronounced that right. Well, he was killed. He was in jail. He was stabbed twice, and we don't know what happened here. He was being held on charges of embezzling 200 million rubles from the MiG Aerospace Company. Now, we already know that 6 Russian diplomats have died in the last 3 months. All but one died on foreign soil. But it looks like someone is cleaning house right now, which is very interesting. They're getting rid of all these individuals, covering their tracks. Now, we know the deep state, they want Trump out of there. We know Robert David Steele, he's saying that they're getting ready and prepared for riots come May 1st. We understand that Soros, he penned an op-ed in the New York Times calling and mustering the troops to come together and fight Trump hate. We see Diane Feinstein out there right now saying that there are efforts being pushed that are underway right now to remove Donald Trump. She's saying that they're going to push so hard, they're going to get him to resign. So they're going to try to go through the legal aspect. I mean, of course, when I say legal, they're going to use all different type of dirty methods to remove him from the presidency. They'll make it look really good. And if that can't get him to resign, or they can't impeach him, or if they can't get rid of him, they're going to move it to the next level. And we already can see from the hearings in which way they're trying to do this. Because right now the FBI is continuing with the investigation against Trump. They have admitted that. They're investigating. We also see that they're not going to investigate the leaks whatsoever because, again, the deep state controls what is going on here. They were reciting all the newspaper articles about Russia, Russian collusion, about the hacking, and using that as their basis of the investigation. The only individual in there, Trey Gowdy, he actually is the only one that shed light on the entire hearing of what was really going on and showed America what Comey and the rest are actually doing and who controls them. And the deep state, they're not going to stop. As we move throughout the rest of this year, they're going to push their plans. They're going to push their goals. We're going to see things get really chaotic. We'll have to see come May, June, if protests and riots are put together. We'll have to see what else they come up with, because we know where we're headed. We're headed for a collapse where the central bank wants to control what is going on to blame it on Trump. They want to push a war, and we can see they want to control what is going on. On the other hand, Trump is trying to control the situation on his hand. Now, am I agreeing with everything that he does? No, he's losing control left and right. He's lost control in regards to what is going on in the Middle East, with all the troops that are heading out there, the United States invading Syria. And here in the United States, if he doesn't prove that he was wiretapped or surveillance was being done on him, even though there's other type of circumstantial proof that, yes, the CIA has been surveilling people, he needs to show concrete paperwork, or they're going to use that against him and bury him. Because nobody cares if the deep state, the Democratic Party, was lying about the Russian collusion. You can see it already. They're already backtracking on that. So the deep state, they're going to be pushing forward. They want control. They want a collapse. They want a reset. They want a war. That's their end game. That's their goal. And if you notice throughout all of this period of time, they haven't stopped. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.